Hello, welcome to my Facebook Live. I'm Charmaine Bryan, author of the book Stop Buying Clothes You Don't Wear and founder of Charmaine Bryan Image Consulting. I help entrepreneurs and professionals to elevate their professional image through enhancing their appearance, behavior, and communication. Well, thank you for joining me on my live today. Last week, I spoke about how to start a speech or a presentation with impact. This week, I'm going to be talking about how to end a speech or a presentation so that you have that lasting impression on an audience so that they remember your talk a few days or even a few weeks down the line. So how do we end our talks, presentations, speeches with an impact? Well, there's a few things that you could do. Number one, keep it short. When you are doing a speech or a presentation, the bulk of it, of course, is the main part. As I said last week, it's the beginning and then the bulk is the main body of the speech. So the conclusion is short, but is relatable. And you usually know when someone is making a summary or conclusion and then they're coming to the end of their speeches, because usually they may say something like, in summary, in conclusion, as I was saying, to end it. So there's a few sentences that someone may say to indicate that they're coming to the end of their speech. So how do we make an impact at the end of our speeches, talks, presentations? Well, like when you begin a speech, I mentioned last week, you could finish with a quote, something that's memorable, something that's related to your speech, so that it can really wrap up what the main body of your speech was. And even if you started with a speech, it could be a quote that's related to what you started with. You could also end with it. You could end with a story that again is relatable, a short story that can tie in with what you was talking about in your presentation or your speech. And that's a great way for the audience to think back to what you were talking about and how it's relatable to what you were talking about in your speech. But do make it short and make sure that it reinforces the message. A favorite of mine when speaking or giving a presentation, you could give the audience a call to action. You know, for example, if you're talking about if you were giving a persuasive talk, where can you vote for me, or can you go out and buy something, or you should read this. That's a great way to challenge your audience to go and do it. Go and buy that product. Think about who you're going to vote for. So that's a great way of ending your speech. Actually get them afterwards to not just think about what you've spoken about, but actually go out and do something. Another great way to finish your speech is ask a rhetorical question. And these are great in a sense of, because if you are discussing something or choosing a point of view or trying to persuade someone or influence someone in your talk, it could be that if they don't take the action, or it could be if they don't, or they decide to just sit there and think about it, a rhetorical question could be, well, if you don't take this action today, or if you don't do what was discussed, what will this mean for you? If you don't do it, why aren't you doing it? And then it gets the audience to really think about what they're doing and why they want to do something, rather than they've listened to your talk and thought that was a great talk. It gets them to question in their own minds why your particular topic may move them to go and do something. You could refer to the beginning of the speech when you're ending. You may have started the speech of, well, I like, for example, one of my talks is when I'm talking about image, that you make the first impression within the first tenth of a second. And then when I finish that talk, I say, remember, we're always making that first impression in that first tenth of a second. Remember who's watching you. So you could really, that's a great opportunity to tie back how you started with how you finished. So you're just, it's coming full circle so that the audience can remember. And it's a great way for the audience to remember exactly what you talked about at the beginning, and it leaves them with that impression. You could summarize your main points. For example, you could say, I spoke about step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And then at the end of your talk, you can remind them what to say, for example, what those 5 steps are. And that's a great way for them to, again, remember what you spoke about and possibly for them to go and take some action. Another way to end your speech is to ensure that you try and memorize the end of your speech so that you can finish strong and that you've made that impact on the audience. And try to end your speech on time when you're delivering a speech. It's so important to keep to time because so many people don't have a lot of time. So you want to make sure that when you are speaking, you're not waffling on and that you're to the point. And also, and when you are speaking, you're ending your talk, your speech, your presentation, don't try not to add anything new to your presentation simply because it can just confuse the audience. So think about just, as I said, summarizing what you've already said and leave it at that. And if you've forgotten to say something, it's something that you can talk about next time. The audience who is listening to you don't know what you are going to talk about, and then they don't know what's in your speech or your presentation. So if you've forgotten something, it doesn't really matter. So an excellent speech is always great to end on a positive note so that people can remember your speech a few hours, a few days, or even a few weeks down the line. They may not necessarily remember exactly what you spoke about, but usually if you end strong and end with an impact, they will remember at least how you ended your speech. So to conclude, how to end your speech strongly or your presentation strongly, you could use a quote, you could tell a story, give a call to action, ask a rhetorical question, summarize what you spoke about in your speech as I'm doing now, and you could also refer to the beginning of your speech. So those are some of the ways that you can end your speech with impact so that your audience will remember what you've said in your speech, whether it will be a few days later, a few weeks, or even a few months down the line. Because you always want your audience to listen and take something away from what you're talking about. And if you're listening to this on the replay, I would love to hear your comments on what you do when you're ending your speeches. How do you make an impact? Do you use any of the 5 that I just listed above, or is there anything else that you do when you're ending your speeches? Well, thank you for joining me today. Decided to make this a short one, and make sure that you tune in at the usual time next week at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in the meantime, if you want to find out more about me, you can go and check my website at charmainebryan.com. I will put a link in the comments. Again, thank you for joining me today, and do comment with how you end your talks. I would love to discuss with you. I will answer any comments that you do make. And thank you for joining me today. See you next Thursday. Bye.